Hello folks, this video was actually done 2 or 3 days before. I wanted to publish this video before the new year, but I had to make certain revisions of this video because this is very important. And if you are interested in the new drone laws and if you want to know the true drone laws, yes, the remote ID, which is released by FAA, the executive summary, does say that you can fly over people. They made a lot of changes about how to fly over people. That's what we are going to talk about. But after going through the whole thing 2 or 3 times, this whole 292-page document, like I went like 2 times over the past 2 days. I have dedicated the whole, basically the 31st of December and January just to go through this. I did not find anything about sub 250. And now we'll begin the episode, and now we are going to discuss in depth about the new flying over people kind of law and everything. Huge changes have been made. It's going to be a very new significant kind of a jump because they're trying to make it much more safer. Let's see what they have changed. Let the video begin. This rule expands routine operations of small unmanned aircraft over people without a waiver or exemption under certain conditions. Prior to this final rule, small US operations over people were limited to operations over people who are directly participating in an operation located under a covered structure or inside a stationary vehicle. The rule expands the ability to conduct operations over people provided that the operation meets requirements of one or of 4 operation categories. So one of 4 you should meet. This rule establishes subpart D to part 107, which sets for the aircraft eligibility operating requirements for the 4 categories of operation over people. The first 3 categories of operation over people with the agency proposed in the next page in the NPRM. So let's skip that and let's go to the FAA maintains the prohibition on open air assemblies for category 3 as proposed. So now we are going to understand what is category 1, 2 and 4. Additionally, in response to comments, remote pilots are prohibited from operating small unmanned aircraft as category 1, 2 or 4 operating in sustained flight over open air assemblies unless the operation meets requirements. And to conduct operations involving sustained flight over air assemblies over category 1, 2 and 4, remote pilots must voluntarily comply with the operating broadcast requirements. So you will have to have remote ID, and if you are flying over that, you will have to have remote ID identification device, and you should comply with broadcasting your altitude, your longitude, latitude, and your velocity of the aircraft, also a precise location of the aircraft with UAID, which is your unmanned aircraft ID serial number, probably the manufacturer, but I'm pretty sure they will not ask for the manufacturer. So following the operation compliance date of the final rule, all unmanned aircraft are required to register and must meet operating requirements of remote identification. We understand that. Sustained flight over an open air assembly of people category 1 and 2 operation does not include brief one-time transiting over a portion of assembled gathering where the transit is nearby incidental to a point-to-point unrelated to the assembly. Examples of open air assemblies are described later in the section. So here is the thing. In this portion, if you are one-time transiting from over a portion of the assembled gathering where the transition is just by incidental, you are kind of waived, I think so, kinda. So for example, your shot requires going around a structure and you are making a video about that structure, or you are like just mapping the structure or anything, and you're going above people and it's just incidental that people walked into your frame and you're just crossing over. You do not need a waiver or anything. It was just incidental. So it should not be intentional and it should be incidental. So that's kind of the difference. So let's go to category 1 operation. This is where everything changes up here. So you see, category 1 operations over people are permitted using a small UA that weighs 0.55 pounds or less. So that includes sub 250 also. So anything below 0.55 pounds or less, it's there, including everything that is on board or otherwise attached to the aircraft at the time of takeout throughout the duration of each operation. So here is the most important thing. It does not contain any exposed rotating part that would lacerate human skin on impact with a human being. Remote pilots are responsible for determining that their small UAV does not exceed the weight threshold, and ensuring that their small unmanned aircraft does not contain any exposed rotating parts that would lacerate human skin, which means that they are more pushing you towards ducted kind of drones. A ducted drone like this, which is an iFlight Green Hornet, might not be one of my favorite drones, but I did shoot a lot of proximity videos with this for my purpose. I'm not doing anything major or anything, but to be very honest, the incident, as of right now, I do not have a lot of incident. The reason behind is that they're very poor in performance. They would not be flying very high. The maximum I could take this is like a tree's height, and they have very limited range. So they have very limited range and everything. Poor efficiency. You will get your thrust to throttle ratio is round about like 60% to gain like good amount of thrust. I did change this to like penta propellers, and things have changed a little bit. So we'll discuss that later on in another episode, how this penta props have drastically improved the performance of a ducted whoop. This is what not they're looking for. You cannot fly drones like this with exposed propellers over people. Also, one more stuff. Usually nobody flies FPV freestyle quads around people or over people, because our cameras are pointed like this. You cannot fly your DJI, Auto Evos, Parrot, Skydio over people with exposed props. So basically they want the manufacturers to do modifications. I do not know what's going to happen to your quad after you purchase this in a span of a year and a half. You probably will be buying extra quad sets and everything. I do not know whether DJI is going to take back, recall their drones and fit them with remote ID. Remote ID is something that needs to be prefixed. So the future remains unknown for people, those who just bought their quads and drones. Also, that sub 250 limit has been taken away. I did not see any sub 250 conversation in this whole 292 page document. And I have been reading this since yesterday. I didn't even have my breakfast today, and it's already 5 o'clock in the evening. Alrighty, so one more revision. Is this, that the sub 250 totally changes for people, those who are part 107 owners. Now, if you're planning to use a Beta 85X or 95X for some, like commercial shoots, real estate and stuff like that, and you want to add a naked GoPro and all that stuff, and you want to make a commercial shoot about this, you are okay if you're using something like Beta 95X, but you need to have remote ID identification module included, and you have to make sure that you are broadcasting before you prepare for the flight. Very interesting. Sub 250 for hobbyists is perfectly fine. That's what I have narrated by doing 2 revisions on this document. Let's continue, and we'll come up with revisions as the journey progresses. So next is going to be no remote pilot in command may operate a small unmanned aircraft as category 1 operation in sustained flight over open air assemblies unless the operation meets applicable remote ID identification and requirements. So basically they want you to have remote ID at first, and they do want no exposed props. This is your ground rule for category 1. Category 2, provides performance based eligibility and operational thing. These are for unmanned aircrafts that weigh more than 0.55 pounds but do not have airworthiness certificate under part 21. To be eligible for category 2 operations, a small unmanned aircraft must comply with the following 3 safety. Now this concerns again people those who are making cinewhoops, big cinewhoops that carry red digital cameras. So for example, people those who are making, like, buying parts like Shen drones take, and they're buying Shen drones like stuff and everything, and they're building themselves. It's a huge impact because they have to show airworthiness and they have to maintain that certificate of airworthiness. And let's go to the next page. First, the small aircraft must be designed, produced, or modified as such that it will not cause any injury to human being that is equivalent to or greater than the severity caused by a transfer of 11 foot-pound of kinetic energy upon impact from a rigid object. Will be a small UA will be only eligible to conduct category 2 operations if the person submitting the declaration of compliance can demonstrate that the injury resulting from an impact between a small unmanned aircraft and a person on the ground is less than this injury severity limit. So basically this says that you're operating, for example, you're part 107 license pilot, and you just have a contract with Red Bull to chase their drones, to chase their, like cars and everything, or motocross people, those who are do dirt bikes and everything. You want to chase them with the red digital on top of the Shen drones take kind of a thing. I'm just taking Shen drones as a example. It can be anything. You could have just pre-built your own quad, own design and everything. That flexibility is lost because you have to prove your airworthiness, and you have to make sure that they are about a certain amount of kinetic energy transfer. So basically you have to go through all the testing and everything, and you have to prove that to the FAA. It's so funny that they have added this. I'm again quoting this because I'm seeing this right now. They are saying in this document, and you should go through this document if you're a part 107 like a license owner, and you're doing this as your form of your small business. Even it doesn't matter, even if it's a small business, you would have to have an FAA compliance certificate if you have manufactured that drone yourself. Now if you would have bought a pre-built drone, you're good, but the pre-built manufacturers who are building them, they need to have an FAA compliance certificate. Well, let's proceed with more. Also, category 2 includes category 1. Category 2 includes means that, what does it mean? It means that it will also include that the big US, which is above 0.55 pounds, should also not have its propeller exposed. So there should not be laceration injury, which is very tricky to be honest. Okay, so next go to this one. A small UA eligible under category 2 operations must have a display label of the aircraft indicating eligibility of conduct. Category 2 operations have current remote pilot operating instructions and be subject to a product support and notification process. The eligibility requirement of category 2 are discussed in section 6A. So if you are having quads bigger than these drones displayed out here, which is more than 0.55 pounds, which means that you are business owners and you are dedicatedly doing videos for cinema industry and everything, this will concern you. This will really concern you. And it's very, I don't know, like it's going to be very hard to prove these 2 points, which is to prove the kinetic energy impact kind of a clause. It's very hard. Additionally, no remote pilot in command may operate a small unmanned aircraft as category 2 operation in sustainable for open air assemblies unless the operation meets the remote identification, operation and broadcast requirements. So basically they're saying that remote ID should be present. Category 3 is again similar to category 2 To be eligible for Category 3, operations of a small unmanned aircraft must meet certain safety requirements. Although Category 3 operations are subject to a higher injury severity limit than Category 2, well, this part, Category 3, is not for us. Designs that use propeller guards and that prevent exposure of rotating parts would be acceptable to the FAA and in typical human encounters. And adding rotor shrouds, full body cages, or other safety features might be ways to fulfill the requirement. So might be, it is not that it so even if you have ducted props and everything, that might be able to fulfill the requirement. So I am going with the Cinewoop route this year, if suppose like something comes up. For this, do buy prop guards. I know that Mavic Air 2 prop guards, you have to purchase them separately if you are planning to fly. So finally, we'll be showing you this part, because this is the end of the chapter. So Category 1 under Part 107.110 says that to conduct Category 1 operations, which will be Mavic Air 2s or FPV drones, a remote pilot in command must use small unmanned aircraft that weighs 0.5 pounds or less on takeoff, does not contain any exposed rotating parts that would lacerate human skins upon impact with human being. No remote pilot in command may operate a small in sustained flight over open air assemblies of human beings unless the operation meets requirements either through this or this part of Part 89 of this chapter. Category 2, a remote pilot in command must use a small aircraft that is eligible for Category 2 operations and everything, is listed in FAA accepted declaration of compliance. Your stuff should be compliant, is labeled as eligible to conduct Category 2. So you have to be compliant and you have to label it. No remote pilot in command may operate a small unmanned aircraft in sustained flight over open air assemblies of human beings unless the operation meets requirements either, again, 89.10 of Part 89 of the chapter. And we are not going to go through Category 3, and they are stressing of one major design modification is that's going to be ducted propellers. So the takeaway from this is that you can operate UAVs which are smaller, Category 1, which will be our quads, but we have to modify them and we have to make sure that our props are not exposed. So basically these props will not work. Well, with that note, I'll end this episode. You now know the remote ID implementation and new FAA rules about how to fly your quad around or over people. For night, we'll be covering night separately because that needs to be touched again, and we'll be covering how to fly your drone according to the new rules of FAA at night. So till then, take care, good night. This is not a regular FPV channel, but we have FPV episodes on the side. So if you want to join the channel, you're most welcome. But most importantly, please share this information with your co-flyers and make sure they know about the true facts rather than facts that will be going out as rumors. So goodbye. Man, that was a long episode.